The venue in which a professional sports team plays their matches, regardless of the sport, is incredibly important, as a good stadium can help to build a team's identity, while a bad stadium can often lead to lower fan support and a reduced income. As a result, clubs in all sports have looked at ways to play at the biggest and best stadiums that can offer amenities and comfort to fans, and often look at building in prime locations, which can be in city centers or near roadways. This mindset has led to clubs from a variety of sports to start sharing stadiums, as the idea would be that it would allow for a city to build one stadium that could host many of its city's sports teams. Multi-purpose stadiums have been around in some capacity for nearly a century. However, stadiums built for the purpose to host more than one professional team started to occur throughout North America in the 60s and 70s, when land was relatively cheap. They were typically placed near highways and would be connected to a large parking lot, but typically not connected with the city's public transit system. In the United States, a majority of stadiums were built with baseball in mind, but some, like Polo Grounds and the original Yankee Stadium, were often used for American football teams as well. As a result, even Yankee stadiums were designed to fit a football field as well, and was also designed so it could be used for track and field, with a running track built around the outside of the field. This set the foundation for the warning track that can be seen on every baseball field today. This was certainly an outlier, however, as most of the traditional jewel park or traditional baseball stadiums were built with solely baseball in mind and almost exclusively hosted baseball teams. And that takes us to the first type of multi-purpose stadium, which is the running track football field combo. They should be the most recognizable worldwide, as they have been used since just after the First World War, as many cities, especially those that have hosted the Summer Olympics, have built these stadiums, as the dimensions needed to host track and field events and association football teams are very similar. As a result, throughout Europe, South America, Asia, Africa, and so on, these stadiums are a dime a dozen. This is especially the case in Italy, as many of the older football stadiums still have the running track visible and/or have attempted to retrofit seat and stands where the track used to be. Examples of this are the Stadio Olimpico in Rome, which was built from 1929 to 1953 and certainly is deserving of its own video. The Stadio Olimpico Grande Torino, which opened in 1933, and the Stadio Domenico Armando Maradona in Napoli, which opened in 1959. These stadiums are vital for hosting Olympic events. However, in the world of football, they are not ideal and have continually been replaced or renovated around the world for purpose-built football grounds. This allows for stadiums to be built with a much tighter layout, resulting in the crowd sitting much closer to the pitch. This has been the move all over the world, but England certainly has been among the leaders, as shoebox-like stadiums are being built which have great viewing angles. Perhaps the strongest example of this is Leicester City's King Power Stadium, which was built in 2002. As this stadium seats 32,000, but still allows the spectators to be very close to the pitch. Unlike the stadiums of the same size that have a running track built in, where spectators will at times sit at the closest about 100 feet away. Outside of North America, other than the track and field, association football, and rugby stadiums, multi-purpose stadiums are not as noticeable. And were not as noticeable as North American stadiums simply because North American stadiums were often built to host baseball as well. This made these stadiums unique, because unlike outside North America, where multi-purpose stadiums only really had to fit different sizes of rectangular surfaces, North American fields would have to be built to fit both a diamond shape and a rectangular field inside of it. Which now takes me to the main reason I wanted to make this video. As the multi-purpose experiment from the 1960s to 80s in the United States was widespread and perhaps the least unique design strategy in all of sports. As stated earlier, multi-purpose stadiums provided cities with an advantage, and that was that one piece of real estate could support more than one team, which would allow for other areas and funds to be spent and used elsewhere. To build on the fact that they were often considered to be some of the least creative stadiums, they have been dubbed cookie-cutter stadiums and the lesser-known concrete donuts, the latter which I have personally never heard before making this video. These stadiums would feature a circular design which would accommodate both baseball and football by rotating sections of the box seat areas in order to fit the dimensions of each field. There are many of the infamous cookie-cutter stadiums throughout the United States, and I'll list some of them here. So, the first of the cookie-cutter stadiums was Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium, or RFK Stadium for short, which was built in Washington, D.C. in 1961. Shea Stadium in New York, built in 1964. Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, which was built in 1965. The Astrodome in Houston from 1965. The Bush Memorial Stadium in St. Louis from 1966, and just when you thought that must have been all of them, it's not. The next was the Oakland Coliseum in 1966, which is still used today by the Oakland A's, which is another issue for another video. San Diego Stadium in 1967, Riverfront and Three Rivers Stadium in 1970, in which Riverfront was in Cincinnati and Three Rivers was in Pittsburgh. Veterans Stadium from Philadelphia in 1971, and finally, the Kingdome in Seattle from 1976. These stadiums were all home to at least two teams, being an MLB franchise and an NFL franchise, with the Kingdome and Astrodome also hosting basketball at both a full-time and a part-time level due to both venues being roofed stadiums. These stadiums were able to achieve multi-purpose status due to their layout, as many of these stadiums overlaid one sideline of the football field along one of the baseball foul lines. For stadiums that were built more for the football team, the stands would be at nearly right angles, which allowed the football field to be squared within the bleachers. This would cause the baseball configuration to have many terrible viewpoints, which can be seen in newer multi-purpose stadiums that were not listed before, like what is now known as the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami and Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome in Minneapolis. On paper, it certainly seems like a good idea, as it allowed major sports teams to share the costs of operation, as well as were quite large, all having capacities over 50,000 for at least one of the sports. But the cookie-cutter stadiums were divisive venues. To start, while they were intended to easily accommodate American football, association football, and baseball, the different sizes of fields made them inadequate for all sports. For example, when set up for baseball, in many of the stadiums the lower level boxes were set very far back, which created huge foul ball areas, which can be seen in the Oakland Coliseum. In addition to this, in an attempt to build the stadiums without support columns, which had traditionally obstructed spectators' views in traditional baseball fields, they instead were forced to make the stadiums build themselves outwards, and the upper decks were very far away from the field, and in some cases were up to 600 feet away in total distance. This led to many teams closing the upper decks, which unfortunately can also be seen with the Oakland Coliseum. In the case of football, the seats that were closest to the field would often be set farther back due to the dimensions for baseball. In addition, the prime seats for baseball were almost at field level for football, which was too low for a great view of the game. In general, sightlines were always a problem. In addition to sightlines, the capacity of stadiums were also problematic. As while 60,000 seat stadiums are fine for NFL or even association football, as the teams play infrequently enough that they can draw large crowds, for baseball, a sport that plays 162 games per summer, that is way too large for non-playoff games, and led to baseball orientations of many of the stadiums having closed upper decks to save staffing costs and to look more full. The last critique I'll mention in this video is the use of artificial turf throughout the multi-purpose stadiums. Today, many stadiums throughout North America use artificial turf, and while it's critiquable, that surface is much different than what was used throughout the 60s and 90s. Most of the early artificial turf surfaces, or originally dubbed AstroTurf, was not much more than carpet on top of concrete, with little to no padding, so the material could be easily applied and removed. For baseball, that meant that the ball would take huge bounces off the very hard infield grass, which led to teams taking advantage of this by encouraging players to hit the ball into the ground to induce ground balls. For baseball, football, and association football, injuries were a concern, as the turf had no give and was very tough on joints. As well, playing a season with this as your home stadium in the NFL meant that players would play many games of an incredibly physical sport on what was essentially concrete, which was definitely a concern for players when signing contracts. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it entertaining and informative. There's lots of topics in this video that I think I'd like to expand upon further in future videos, but for now, I'll leave it here. If you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting, and comment what you think I should do next. I hope you have a great day.